Welcome into this Lion Legend feature. We're catching up with former UNA great James Davis, a member of the UNA football program from 1987 to 1990. He wrapped up his career as UNA's all-time leading tackler while becoming the school's first ever two-time All-American. He also became the first UNA football player to post 300 tackles in 3 consecutive seasons in his career. Finished his career as the school's all-time leading tackler with 528 stops, 24 tackles in a game twice. That's the school record. He did that against Alabama A&M and Jacksonville State. James Davis, thank you for taking the time to be our next Lion Legend.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm very excited. I've seen other people do it, and I was glad to get this phone call.
We can't wait to go down memory lane with you, but first off, give UNA fans an update on sort of where life has taken you to this point.
Life has been really good for me. I currently work with Mutual of Omaha. It is a long-standing brand name, just like the University of North Alabama, Wild Kingdom, and things like that. I have 2 great directors, Dave Giegleman. He recruited me. His background was very similar to mine. He worked approximately 20 years in another industry and then joined Mutual Omaha, and then my regional director, Chris Simmons. So that's where we are right now, helping people. I used to be a principal, helping students graduate and go to college. Now I get to do it on the grown people end.
So we're going to jump throughout your career from your playing days to your professional career as well. But we like to start all of these interviews with the University of North Alabama, your time in Florence. What does this place mean to you?
Florence means to me very simple. I always said if I was lost or misplaced, make sure you go to Florence. That's where I am. Not at the beach. I'm not in Panama City. And when we came, it was a great time because we were coming off a runner-up finish to the national championship game in '85. We had, unfortunately, it snowed just like it did a few years ago when we went to Kansas City. So we don't have good luck when we go out west. And UNA was in a diversity campaign at that time, doing some minority recruiting, a strong recruiting program. The thing I remember most about that program was Marty and the band and things like that. And I remember him, he started Ascending Voices. And I think the Ascending Voices is still at the University of North Alabama 30 plus years later. So I think they got a pretty good investment for their money.
Let's jump into your story. And for you, take us back to Chilton County High School, Clayton, Alabama. Sports, athletics, what was it like for you growing up?
It was great. You know, you played Little League baseball, and you played football, and then you eventually, I never played middle school football. I was a Little League king. They called me Pee Wee King. And that wasn't probably good when I got to high school because they, you know, people want to thump me on my head because he's just a Pee Wee kid. But my career was great. During the Chilton County High School, Don Ham was my football coach. And Coach McMahon recruited me from the University of North Alabama. And when he came, we didn't even sign at the school. We signed at my house. And that was unique. So we didn't know where to sign back then. You know, signing day is a big thing now. And you at the school, they're in the gym. It was a little minute thing. And when I came to Florence, we had 1 suitcase and a Foot Locker, and I was proud of that.
Now, you mentioned North Alabama made it to the national championship game in '85. The '80s, the football program really started taking off. So for you, back in high school, what sort of reputation did UNA football have throughout the state?
It was a well-known down there, and because we had Coach, I forget the defensive back coach name, but he was from the Florida Panhandle and Mobile area, so we had a real strong hold on that. And of course, Coach McMahon recruited the Central Alabama, and from that standpoint, and so we definitely knew about that. And when they beat Troy, you know, that was the kick. James Knowles kicked the ball, and that's when you're still playing 3-0 balls, 7-3 balls, things like that. We're not trying to score 45 points today. But James Knowles made the kick, and that exploded in the state of Alabama, and that's probably was the turning point for the University of North Alabama football when we beat Troy in Troy.
Wayne Grubb was the head coach when you arrived in 1986. Let's go back to your recruitment. You signed at your high school, but what made North Alabama the choice for you?
When I came up there, if you're from Clinton, the tallest building is not very tall. And so when I drove, you go across this bridge, I think I'm in New Orleans or something. Then I see all these big buildings, and it's not that many, but it's more than Clinton, Alabama has from that standpoint. So it didn't take much to impress me. Then when you went down Pine Street, you got 4 lanes, took you to the mall, and Princeton's is still going on. And then, so it didn't take much to make me glass-eyed and think I was in a real big city like New York. It was probably one of the largest cities I ever going to stay in at that time, growing up in Clinton, Alabama.
So you arrive in Florence in 1986. You redshirt that first year. Then as a redshirt freshman, you finished the season with 69 tackles. Those early days under Coach Grubb, first 2 years at North Alabama, what was the experience like?
Well, it was tough because when we came off the national championship, it was discouraging when you got all these accolades and now you're not playing. And then you think you're better than the guy in front of you. And the coaches would tell you that's exactly how you're supposed to feel, or we wouldn't have recruited you. But your time is coming. I was there with Roland Wilson. Riley Neal had just been a dynamic defensive lineman. They recruited me because of, I think it was Steve Rogers. They had like a Mike linebacker. He might be stacking the nose 1 minute, stacking the outside the defensive end the next minute. I mean, he did whatever he wanted to do. And that what recruited me to the North Alabama, that I get to watch film and then I can just line up anywhere I want to go from that standpoint. And so and I was a special team players that year. And so most of those tackles were on special team because we were that good. Coach Howe was a great defensive coordinator. We were so good that if you made a mistake, you knew you was coming out. I mean, and somebody was going in, but you'll be back out there 4 plays later because Coach Howe didn't take it. but you could substitute it, and there was not a drop-off. That's how good we were defensively.
1988, Bobby Wallace takes over as head football coach. In those early days when he first arrived, just how tough was it going through practice under him?
I guess I'll tell the truth. It was tough. I ain't gonna tell you what we call Coach Wallace, truthfully, but we'll just call him Coach Wallace. They ain't gonna tell you what we call Coach Harris, Coach McNeil. They ran us, and they ran us. That was the least of the things that we did. That was great when we only had to run from that standpoint. It was like conjunction boys or something with the University of Alabama and things like that. But I will say this, the ones that stayed, Coach Wallace is a player's coach. He brought Coach Harris in. Coach Harris, Coach Harris is great, but he had played also at Auburn and pro football and things, and he taught us how to break down film, and you thought you already knew how to break down film from that standpoint. Alvin Briggs came with that staff, and of course, he's the Alabama High School athletic director now, and did a wonderful job, but he did a wonderful job coaching, and we learned so much from that standpoint. And but it was so cold, and we called them sea now. It was 0 degrees, 5:30 in the morning. They made us go into Flowers Hall, and then we walked out and ran. We still gonna run, guys, because they don't cancel football for cold weather. I'm sorry. That's what Coach Wallace told us. But we wrestled, so we thought we were WWE from that standpoint, UFC. Whatever they thought it was tough, make you tough. Because Coach Wallace didn't even like the helmets because they had gold face masks on. So he took the face masks off and he said, y'all gonna look mean. So he put purple face mask on. Gold ain't very intimidating from that standpoint. And so, but Coach is a great coach, great players coach. Coach Campbell, please don't let me forget him because he didn't cut the offense no slack either on that side of the ball from that standpoint. So it was very tough, very challenging. And when we finished, unfortunately, speeding up, I know we're going to go back, but we had 7 people graduate with my senior class. That's how tough it was.
Now, you really exploded that sophomore season, 156 tackles, 87 more than the season before. That statistical jump, where did that come from?
You had great linemen. Let me tell you, they single blocked every defensive lineman one time. I'll be honest. Henry Thomas, they single blocked him. He went for 12 tackles, 2 calls fumbles, 3 quarterback sacks. Grizz, he went on to play in the Super Bowl with the San Diego Chargers. Sean Lee was his government name, but we call him Grizz from that standpoint. But would you rather hit a 300-pound tackle or you take on a 210-pound? And I really wasn't 210 pounds, but it sounded good. I was 200. But they took their chances with me, and that turned out not to be too good either. But I would have double-teamed Henry and Grizz as well.
Now, first game of that season, North Alabama fell to Alabama A&M by score 17-16, but you set a school record with 24 tackles, a number that you would tie later on against Jacksonville State. But take us back to that record-setting day, 24 tackles. What are your memories?
I remember, unfortunately, I hate that game because the guy that kicked the winning field goal they were teaching him how to kick first. Before the game, he was from Africa, unfortunately. He played soccer. That's what I remember. And we let this guy score. But from the statistical standpoint, I was excited. I was happy. I mean, but it was a standard game to me from that standpoint because that's what I expected to do. That's what I've been doing since I was in high school, averaging, you want to hear a funny story, what kids do, what we used to do when we were freshmen, we would get together. Because we're redshirted. Redshirt, don't happen the day freshmen play. So I'm sitting here telling them what I did, and I'm from Chilton County. And I told them I averaged 15, 16 tackles a game, sometimes 20. They said, yeah, right, man. You don't tackle nobody 15, 20 times in a game when the most was 8 or 10 or 12. That was the highest number. I said, well, I guess you'll see one day. I don't know. You just asked me, and I just told you from that standpoint. And so when I finally get that number 24, they said, well, I guess he did do 24 tackles in high school. So it really validated me. That game validated me with my teammates because prior to then, they had never seen 24 tackles. So I was very excited.
Tackling is something you did a lot of during your career, more than that in just a moment. But 89 season rolls around, junior year for you. UNA goes 6-5, and at this point, second year under Bobby Wallace. How's the program starting to change?
Recruitment-wise, we got freshmen in that are learning and growing. Harvey Summerhill is going to have a major impact on the program later. Troy Nelson is going to have a major impact on the program much later. And so Coach Wallace figured it out. He figured out what a Division II athlete looked like and how to recruit. And when they figured it out, Coach Campbell, Coach Harris, Coach Fowler, please do not forget Coach Fowler, my heart and soul, the defensive coordinator from that standpoint. And that's when the athletes came in, and we had great athletes to come in with us. That was the problem when we had that little transition. Coaches changed. Morris Terrell, you remember, he still set a record, just like I set some records, 225 yards as a freshman. That was part of my class. Of course, we all came after the national championship game, but Morris would not finish his career there. And so Coach Wallace, when he was doing all the things that he was doing, he was building a positive culture. He made us tough mentally, physically. And when we approached the game, he taught us how to be polished athletes, and we're very proud of that.
Again, that season, you have another big year, 156 tackles. You equaled the number from the year prior, but also you went through a record chase, becoming the school's all-time leading tackler in just your third season. That record-breaking year, the chase to become the all-time leading tackler. What were your takeaways?
It, every day, people were keeping up with my stats because it felt like truly a team award, because what we had gone through from that standpoint of, being challenged by Coach Wallace, the workouts, the coldness, the everything. And so every time I got an award nationally or player of the week or something, it was truly a team award because Henry had to sacrifice, Grizz is sacrificing, Marcus Hunter is probably in the program now. I know he's going to be down there. Toot Humphrey was coming in. We got him from junior college. And so everything is starting to line up great. But every week, people was rooting for me from that standpoint. In fact, we were a family. Like, for example, after the game, Coach Jones, the basketball coach, he was my number one fan. He's going to say, if I want to find that football, just follow number 20. And then Coach Dr. Roy Stevens, this is how close you would see a college professor, board president, then everybody out on the field happy for us that this transition is working. And that's what I most remember about that season when I was getting those records and increasing my tackle totals. Everybody was happy for you.
You also earned all Gulf South Conference honors as well as being an All-American. And going back to your high school days to now getting the national recognition, how did that make you feel?
To be an All-American, to be honest, in the beginning, you didn't know how to feel because, like All-State, you didn't even know what it was in Clinton. You were just a small town boy, and then you get somebody congratulate you over the intercom, and you're like, Coach, what's that? And then when you get to North Alabama, you do know about All-American, though, when you finally get it. And it makes you feel good. Once again, it was a great team award because we're 6-5. I didn't play for stats. I played to win. And we wasn't proud to be 6-5. And so when we got that 6-5 and I became All-American, that made the defense feel validated from that standpoint. And it gave us hope for the next year. And we knew we was going to have a good year the following year from that standpoint. But because the scheme was getting down, we understood what Coach Fowler wanted, what he was trying to do, where we supposed to be, how we supposed to fit in from that perspective. And so when we kept getting the records, it kept letting us know that we were on the right track.
Now let's jump off the football field for a moment. And after that season, you graduated. Was there a tough decision for you to come back as a graduate student and play that final year?
Yes and no, because all the players talked to me, and you want to go to work. Michael Douglas and Wall Street, I got a business degree from that standpoint, and that was one of the #1 movies out, and you're watching movies and things. You want to be in New York and Chicago and things like that. But the team said we had unfinished business. And when they said that, and I committed myself, and then Coach Wallace spoke with me about a professional career, meaning as a business person versus the NFL, and you're always going to NFL, and if you get the MBA and get a college degree and leave with a MBA, it'll do wonders for you, especially when somebody else is paying for it. And so when Coach Wallace sat down and spoke with me and gave me some advice, and he didn't tell me what to do, but he just laid it out on the table. And then I made the choice to come back to the University of North Alabama. It was the best choice I ever made.
Now, you had a lot of accolades in your career, but you were also a two-time academic All-Gulf South Conference pick. For you, what was the balance like between the classroom and the playing field?
Well, when we came, you had to go to study hall and get out. So August to December, you're watching everybody, and that was by design, have a good time. And you got to go to study hall from 6 to 8 o'clock at night. And so when you get out at 8 o'clock, you get to graduate. So we graduated out of study hall in January. But the classes and the balances of football, the coaches did a good job with that. It was never a problem from that standpoint once you got focused because they developed effective routines. And our School of Business is awesome. because it helped me get an award when I was in Phi Beta Lambda. That was a great opportunity. When I'm a senior now, if you don't mind, can I tell this story? It ain't football related, but
It's actually where I was going to go
I'm
next.
okay. Go ahead, sir.
Well, no, take us through it. The National
Yeah.
Phi Beta Lambda Impromptu Speaking Competition. I'll let you tell the story.
Yes, I'm a senior, and Dr. Crawford's marketing policy class, we have to write papers. And one of the topics he gave me, the last topic in my spring semester, was the euro currency, dollar. How would it affect the United States if Europe went to the euro dollar, just one currency, as opposed to the pound and the franc and things like that? And so I have just researched all the countries in Europe. Now we're in Washington, D.C., representing Phi Beta Lambda, going against all the universities in the United States. And the championship question is, why is international marketing important to the United States of America? I'm like, God, you're really kidding me. And I just could not believe it. And so I just wrote a paper similar to that, and that's what resulted in that. So I thank God for Dr. Gerald Crawford and the preparation that he had given me, and it made me a national champion. When they called me up on stage, I could not believe it from that standpoint. And that's how that happened. That's what resulted in it. I was very prepared. The School of Business is all right with University of North Alabama.
You became the first student in the state of Alabama to win the impromptu speaking competition in Washington, D.C. Certainly a cool little tidbit. So, also heading into your final year, 1990, you pick up a couple of more honors when you were named to the Gulf South Conference Team of the Decade for the 1980s. And 7 UNA players made that team, the most of any school in the Gulf South Conference. You were the only active player still remaining that made that team. But for you, the program, what did it mean to see so many of your teammates and yourself on that team?
Because it represented that the quality of the student athlete that had gone to the University of North Alabama. And to put 7 kids on that team was totally awesome, because Jacksonville State, Troy State, who has now gone on before us with the Division I, and we're in the transition, we always were in competition. And so for 777, basically 21, we're even from that standpoint, because that's how competitive the GSC was from that standpoint. And so then when you make it active, as an active player, once again, everything we did, because of the way after the things happened with the national championship game, everything was always to validate that we was on target. It was not a if we were going to become a championship caliber program, but when, from that standpoint under Coach Wallace. And that's what that validated. When you have done the things that you've done, and the team have sacrificed the sacrifices that they made so that 1 or 2 people can shine from that standpoint. And but we were a family. Just like when I was talking about Dr. Stevens, talking about Dr. Crawford, Mr. Pierce, he was a dynamic transition during that time. But we always seemed to meet on the field at the end of the end zone from that standpoint. So that's what, to me, it means when you're talking about making it as an active player. That's quite an accomplishment, because to be the only one, I still didn't believe it at that time. And when I look back on it now, I realize what I did. And that don't happen often.
Your final year, we've got a lot to unpack. Let's start with the team's success. An 8-3 record. North Alabama made the playoffs for the first time since 1985. And being one of 7 guys that lasted after Coach Wallace's first year from your class, having that pay off, making the playoffs that final season, how special was it to sort of start that run of the 90s for North Alabama?
It was totally awesome, because when we went and starting in January, we wanted to go outside in the cold. We didn't want to go outside 2 or 3 years ago in the cold. We wanted to run. We didn't need the coaches then. They had got us to a point We know what championship teams do now. If you're doing it just with the coaches, you're not a championship caliber team. And when you're doing it away from the game by yourself, and when you got Benny Jennings and people like that around you, because see, Coach Waller was so dynamic that year. He took Benny from tight end and let him be a defensive end. And for one game, the Troy game, the Jacksonville State game. Now, Troy Nelson, I'm going to let you know how good he is. He's an offensive player. All his stats is offense. For one game, Coach Wallace said you're going to become a defensive back, and you're going to cover one receiver all over the field. You know how good how great you got to be to do that? You know how much confidence Coach Wallace got to have in you to do that? He became the co-defensive coordinator like Nick Saban down in Alabama because he really wanted to beat Jacksonville State. And when you look at that game when we went 8-2, the two losses that year, of course, was Mississippi College and it was Jacksonville State. And we're up 7-3 in the fourth quarter, and we let the defensive back get behind us. You always remember the losses. It's great to have accolades. It's great to have records. I don't remember none of that, but I can tell you every play that we lost on from that standpoint. We knocked the Mississippi College quarterback out. That was not a good thing because they had an option quarterback. We hadn't practiced for the option yet. I'm like, you're kidding me. We hit this big 6'5" quarterback, this lumberjack, and then y'all put this little small thing. So those two losses were big to us. And then we, of course, get Jacksonville State in the playoffs, and that resulted in our third loss. But we had gotten back to the playoffs, and we knew that Harvey, Troy, them was going to be – Antonio Holly was still around and a lot of great players. So the table was set for what Coach Wallace was about to do.
Your individual accolades nominated for the Harlan Hill Award, the Alabama Sports Writers Association State Small College Athlete of the Year, Gulf South Conference Defensive Player of the Year. A couple more to go down later on. You picked up the Gulf South Conference Commissioner's Cup. You finished that season, your third straight year, with over 100 tackles, finishing with 147 tackles. UNA's first two-time All-American. I think I've hit just about all of them, but wrapping up your career with all of that, how rewarding was it?
It was truly rewarding because it gave a sense of finality to the journey that we inherited a championship program. We had a little transition in there, but we didn't let it stop us. We didn't let it shut us down. Coach Wallace taught us how to go from boys to men, and there are things he would always talk about, uncontrollable variables. And the things you don't control, don't worry about. Things you do control, worry about. And that's what we did. And the mindset with those 7 people that when we graduated and to get the commissioner's trophy, to be in the sports writer, to be recognized by the state of Alabama and things like that, it was truly a team award because we knew we weren't going to have much individualism on the team because of the transition. And that year validated everything. It was a coming out party for all the people that stayed around in spite of the challenges that we had to have during that time.
A few years later, Ronald McKinnon arrives on campus, a few other greats during that championship run. For you, what was it like watching that championship run, and what were some of your early memories of another small linebacker like Ronald McKinnon coming around?
Well, I'm glad you asked that because Coach Fowler, by me getting redshirted and then by going to graduate school, I was around a little longer than I should have. And Coach Fowler brings me some film, and you have to understand, we got Hollywood film reels. We don't have digital tapes and discs and things like that. And he asked me to look at some film. And when I looked at the film, I thought it was me first because I was a little slim kid. And it was Ronald McKinnon in the end. And he asked me what I thought. And I said that, and that was a play that Ron made. There's 2 people on the left and there's 20 people on the right. In other words, it's a trick play. He made a play. He found the ball. There's no way he can justify why he's on the left side of the field. And I said, Coach, he's going to be special. And he's going to break a lot of records at UNA from that standpoint. And so that's what I remember watching them. And I was at the first game, the first championship that they eventually would win. And all of us went crazy because Satterfield had a big run. You know, Cody had a big run. And Coach Slater called some plays that, like the trap and things like that. It was just a great day. That first championship when it won. Coach Wiley, you still owe me a ring. But no, y'all can keep that one, Coach. But it was great watching that first championship to be there because it was like you was on the field.
So you wrap up your career as UNA's all-time leading tackler. You watch Ronald McKinnon come through. And then throughout that time, UNA's had a lot of great linebackers sort of follow in the footsteps of you guys. What's it been like for you to watch the evolution of the football program to where it is today?
It's been great to watch the evolution of the football program, to see the quality of linebackers. Sometimes we're called linebacker U for that reason, because of myself, and then Ron picked it up. Well, no, it started with Steve Rogers. Let me correct that. And Roland Wilson and all those cats. And I just continue what they did from that standpoint. And we've always had defense, strong defense. Of course, it's modified with offenses the way they're built now, that great athletes want to be on both sides of the football. But our defense and what they've done, UNA will always be a strong defensive school, regardless what they switch to in offense. But I'm excited to say I was part of the linebacking core, and they've gotten better. They got a guy named CT now from Hoover. He's continuing the traditions, and he's going to break a few records. I assure you that too.
2001, you were inducted into the North Alabama Athletic Hall of Fame. A few years later, some of your teammates, Benny Jennings, Troy Nelson, this past year, you guys sort of the pioneers for those early days of UNA football. But seeing your teammates, yourself as well, getting in the Hall of Fame, does it sort of wrap it all up for you at UNA?
Yes, it brings it to a close. That when you ain't talking about 7 people, and then 2 of y'all got into the Hall of Fame. But that was the third one, Cedric Barnett. Please don't forget him. Cedric Barnett from Central Florence, and from that standpoint. And we were very close. In fact, Gennaro Scott was my roommate. And I got 2 godmothers up there. His mother, Linda Scott, we was there. And so what I would say to all that is he's gone on before us, but he was a great defensive back. I can assure you that. And that brings some finality. When Troy went in this past year, I'm so excited for him as well, because I was able to be there and take pictures and video him and things like that, because Troy was out. We worked at the gas company together. So Troy and I are special. I appreciate you.
So looking through your resume, you graduate from UNA, 2 degrees from UNA, marketing is your background, and then you go on to spend 21 years as an educator, serving as a principal as well. At what point, I guess, after UNA did your career intersect into education?
When I graduated from UNA and then I got my master's, my father was injured, and so it's sidetracked me. My father had a disabling car accident. It broke 24 ribs, punctured lung, bruised kidney. He was flown to Caraway Hospital. And so I didn't go into I was in Atlanta interviewing for jobs, but that wasn't going to happen from that standpoint, that I had to come home. And the employment workforce, someone got me a job because I had a degree. They allowed me to go back and work on my teacher's certification and certificates and things. And so that's what I did. And so I went to work at Dallas County High School from that standpoint. That's how that results in that. And I wouldn't leave from that standpoint, because you're just happy to have a job, because my father was disabled 2 years from that standpoint. And I went on to 21 plus years. So.
And the rest of your professional career post UNA, any other highlights?
Well, when I became a principal, I became president of the class principals organization for the Alabama Association of Elementary School Administrators. And when I did that, I got to go to Washington, D.C. for 4 years in a row. And that was quite an experience to have an impact on the public education sector and meet with Senator Shelby and people like that. And when you go up there 4 years, what you discovered like this past year, the funds are going to be frozen in a political year of the president's election. Unfortunately, the Democrats are not going to allow too many things to happen because the Republicans would take the credit. Vice versa, the Republicans are not going to allow too many things to happen because the Democrat would take the credit. So that particular year, funding is going to be based on last year from that standpoint. And so to have a lobbying there, where we weren't really lobbying, but we were telling them what we needed in the state of Alabama. So for 4 years, we could bring money back. And I'm very proud when we was a principal, the school improvement that we always made with kids and the scholarships, and that we would receive Dr. Morton's scholarship. We pioneered Teacher of the Year programs. I was served on selecting the distinguished principal, which is quite an honor to select one of your colleagues as principal of the year, and then they get to go to Washington, D.C. from that perspective. And so I've had a very proud career as a principal and got to see a lot of great principals throughout the state and teachers grow. So I'm definitely very proud of that. And, I got to work on civic service learning projects, Boys and Girls Club. In fact, I must tell this story. Coach Tuberville, the year they had a great team with Jason Campbell and Ronnie Brown and all those guys was there. But imagine Coach Tuberville partnering with the Boys and Girls Club, and they're on a golf tournament. And Coach Tuberville's, of course, on hole 1, Jason Campbell's on hole 2, and the rest of the team. But you got to pay some money. Imagine how much money the Boys and Girls Club made for that golf tournament. And so that was a tremendous blessing. And so after school is my point, what I'm promoting, that the most dangerous times for children it's not 8 to 3, they're safe while they're in school, but it's at 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock, 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock, when mama's still working and transitioning daddy. And so we're very proud of things like that we've done over our career. So I'm satisfied.
From Clanton, Alabama to Florence, Alabama, a Lion legend, 2-time All-American. Any parting shots from your journey through UNA?
Yes, it's great. I was just in Troy a few weeks ago, and their facilities and what they've seen. And I'm so happy that we've talked about this for a minute, and to see it actually coming to fruition. I mean, you got to understand, when we got to UNA, the parking deck was a big deal. That we gonna get a parking deck one day. And then, of course, they've built the nurses building, all the technology building. But I can assure you that when you go see other schools from the 90s, and they're D1 schools now, and they've taken this journey, the finished product is worth the wait. And so I look forward to seeing the finished product. And we're playing this week the largest school that we've ever played in the history of the University of North Alabama athletics program. And I'll just say, Roar Lions and go Coach Willis. Good luck, guys.
Roar Lions indeed. James Davis, thank you for the time.
Thank you, Benjamin.